Corporal James Reeves has been assigned to the Thessari Imperial Palace Guard rotation for 3 years, and he has learned through consistent experience that the most effective way to serve as Palace Guard is to do exactly what the assignment requires without allowing the elaborate court politics happening around you to distract from the actual security responsibilities that justify your presence. Today's formal court session is a typical example of the environment James has learned to navigate professionally. Queen Seraphia will be announcing appointments to several prestigious positions within the imperial administration, the kind of occasion that attracts ambitious courtiers, military officers seeking advancement, and diplomatic representatives hoping to position themselves favorably for future opportunities. The throne room is filled with carefully orchestrated displays of capability, elaborate formal attire designed to communicate status and competence, strategic positioning near the approaches to the throne where sovereign attention is most likely to fall, the subtle but unmistakable performance of people who want to be noticed, want to be considered for advancement, want their presence to register with the Queen as she makes decisions about who will serve in positions of influence and authority. It's calculated ambition, performed with the sophistication that Thessari court culture has refined over millennia. Nothing crude or obvious, just the elegant choreography of people ensuring they're visible in contexts where being seen matters for career advancement. James stands among this performance in his assigned position, one of the peripheral guard stations that line the throne room's perimeter. Not prominent placement near the throne itself. Not ceremonial position that would be photographed or recorded for official documentation. Just standard security posting that requires maintaining alert presence while the court conducts its business. His armor is functional rather than ceremonial. The working equipment that palace guards wear when performing actual security duties, rather than the elaborate decorative variants used for purely ceremonial occasions. It's well-maintained, properly fitted, showing the professional care that good soldiers give their equipment, but it's not designed to be impressive. It's designed to be effective. James's posture is the still, observant stance that 3 years of palace guard duty has ingrained. Weight balanced evenly, hands positioned for rapid response if security situation requires it, eyes tracking movement throughout the room without fixating on any specific person or activity, awareness distributed across the entire space rather than focused narrowly on any particular element. He's doing exactly what his assignment requires, providing security presence, maintaining professional readiness, observing the court session's dynamics to identify anything that might require guard intervention, disputes escalating toward physical confrontation, unauthorized access attempts, the various security concerns that formal gatherings can produce despite elaborate protocol designed to prevent them. What he's not doing is positioning himself to be noticed, not shifting his stance to be more visible when senior officials pass nearby, not making subtle adjustments that would draw attention to his presence, not performing the small signals that guards sometimes employ when they want their service to be recognized as particularly diligent or professional. He's just doing his job, competently, quietly, without making that competence about himself. Around him, the court prepares for Queen Seraphia's entrance. Courtiers adjust their positioning for optimal visibility. Senior military officers ensure their credentials and decorations are prominently displayed. Diplomatic representatives position themselves to demonstrate appropriate deference, while also ensuring they're visible enough to be noticed if the Queen's attention happens to fall in their direction. Other guards throughout the throne room show varying degrees of subtle adjustment as well. Most maintain professional posture, but James notices small shifts, straighter spines when senior officials approach, slight position adjustments that improve visibility from the throne's approach path, the minor performances that guards sometimes make when sovereign presence is imminent and favorable notice could affect career trajectory. James doesn't adjust, maintains exactly the same still, observant posture he's held since taking this posting at the beginning of the court session. His attention remains distributed across the room rather than focusing on the entrance the Queen will use. His stance remains balanced for security response rather than optimized for visibility or impression. He's aware of the approaching moment when Queen Seraphia will enter. The throne room's dynamics are shifting in the characteristic ways that precede sovereign arrival. Conversations becoming more formal, positioning becoming more deliberate, the atmosphere tightening as everyone prepares to demonstrate appropriate deference, and for many, to ensure they're positioned favorably to be noticed. But that awareness doesn't change how James performs his actual duty. He's palace guard. His job is security presence, not political positioning. The Queen's entrance matters for security purposes, heightened alert during sovereign movement, attention to access points and crowd dynamics, the professional vigilance that protecting important people requires. It doesn't matter for personal advancement purposes because James isn't seeking advancement. He serves where he's assigned, does his job well, doesn't calculate how to leverage that service for better postings or higher rank. That absence of ambition isn't strategic choice designed to appear humble. It's genuine approach to military service that James has maintained throughout his career. Do the work competently, let the results speak for themselves. Don't make service about yourself rather than about the mission. In the Thessari Imperial Palace, where ambition is sophisticated art form, and where court advancement requires careful management of how you're perceived by those with authority to grant opportunities, James's complete absence of that calculation makes him unusual. Not unique, other guards maintain similar professional focus, but unusual enough that among the elaborate performances of capability and the strategic positioning for sovereign attention, the human guard who simply stands still and does his job without seeking notice stands out precisely because he's not trying to stand out. The formal announcement sounds, the signal that Queen Seraphia is approaching the throne room and that the court session will begin momentarily. Everyone in the throne room responds with the appropriate protocols. Formal acknowledgment postures, attention directed toward the entrance, the careful choreography of people demonstrating that they recognize sovereign presence requires their respectful focus. James maintains his guard posting. His attention includes the Queen's approach. Security vigilance requires tracking sovereign movement, but it doesn't fixate on her entrance. He's still observing the entire room, still maintaining distributed awareness, still performing his actual security function rather than making the Queen's arrival about demonstrating his own attentiveness. Among polished armor and loud ambition, among courtiers performing capability and guards subtly positioning for attention, the human who stands completely still and completely focused on his actual duty, rather than on being seen, is doing exactly what he was assigned and nothing more. He doesn't shift when Queen Seraphia enters. He doesn't seek her gaze. That is why she notices him. Queen Seraphia enters the throne room with the measured pace and absolute confidence that 3 decades of rule have refined into sovereign presence that requires no performance or announcement to communicate authority. She's accompanied by her immediate entourage, Lord Vethros, her chief advisor, Commander Kethara, captain of the Royal Guard, several senior court officials whose roles require presence during formal sessions. They maintain appropriate positioning, close enough to provide immediate counsel if needed, far enough to allow the Queen the space that sovereign presence requires. The court responds with elaborate courtesies, bows executed with precise timing and depth, appropriate to rank and relationship. Formal acknowledgments delivered in the specific phrasings that Thessari protocol requires. The careful choreography of people demonstrating respect while also positioning themselves to be noticed favorably. Ambitious courtiers have positioned themselves along the Queen's approach path, not so close as to seem presumptuous, but visible enough that her attention might naturally fall on them as she moves toward the throne. They're performing deference perfectly while also ensuring that their performance is seen. Senior military officers stand in prominent positions, displaying their service decorations and formal regalia, communicating capability and readiness for additional responsibility should the Queen's appointments include military positions. Diplomatic representatives from allied species, including the human delegation, maintain appropriate respectful distance while also ensuring they're visible as the Queen passes, acknowledging that this is Thessari court and their guests, but also that alliance partnership means they have legitimate presence in imperial spaces. Guards throughout the throne room maintain their professional stations. Most show subtle shifts as Seraphia enters, straighter postures, more focused attention toward the sovereign, small adjustments that communicate heightened alertness during royal presence, while also, for some, making that alertness visible in ways that might be noticed favorably. James doesn't shift. His posture remains exactly as it was before the Queen entered, still, observant, weight balanced, hands positioned for response, eyes tracking movement throughout the room without fixating on the Queen's approach. He's aware of her presence. Security vigilance requires tracking sovereign movement, requires elevated attention to crowd dynamics when the person you're protecting is present. But his awareness manifests as professional readiness rather than as focused attention designed to be noticed. He's doing his job, providing security presence, maintaining the distributed awareness that effective protection requires, watching the Queen's movement, but also watching everyone else in the room, tracking access points and potential security concerns, performing the actual function that justifies guards being present rather than performing the appearance of diligence. Queen Seraphia moves through the throne room toward the dais where her throne is positioned. Her gaze moves across the gathered court with the kind of comprehensive attention that experienced rulers develop, noting who is present, observing how people position themselves, processing the subtle communications that formal gatherings produce about ambitions and alliances, and the various political dynamics that court sessions reveal. She sees the ambitious courtiers positioned strategically in her path, sees the military officers displaying their credentials prominently, sees the diplomatic representatives maintaining appropriate deference while ensuring visibility. She sees all of it with the sophisticated understanding that decades of navigating court politics have refined. And she sees, at a peripheral guard station that most people wouldn't consider worth noticing, a human guard who hasn't moved or adjusted his position or sought her attention in any way, who stands with the same still, professional posture he presumably held before she entered, who is performing his actual duty, security presence, without making that performance about being noticed. Among the elaborate choreography of people seeking favorable attention, the human who isn't seeking anything stands out, not because he's doing anything dramatic or unusual, because he's doing exactly what he's supposed to do, no more, no less, without the additional layer of performance that everyone else is adding to their required protocols. Seraphia continues her approach to the throne, but her attention has registered the quiet guard at the peripheral station, the human who doesn't shift when she enters, who doesn't seek her gaze, who simply maintains his posting with the kind of professional discipline that doesn't require audience or recognition to be maintained. She reaches the throne, settles into it with the fluid grace that Thessari carry naturally. The court completes its formal acknowledgment protocols, the final courtesies that mark transition from sovereign arrival to the beginning of the actual court session. Lord Vethros prepares to open the session, to announce the agenda and begin the formal proceedings that will culminate in the Queen's appointments being declared. Before he can speak, Seraphia raises one hand in the gesture that signals she wishes to address the court directly before formal agenda proceeds. The throne room goes quiet. When the Queen speaks before formal agenda begins, it typically signals something significant, unexpected announcement, immediate response to urgent matter, something that takes precedence over the planned session business. Seraphia's gaze moves across the court, settles on the peripheral guard station where James maintains his posting. She speaks, her voice carrying clearly across the throne room's expectant silence. Corporal Reeves. The use of his name, spoken by the Queen directly, without intermediary announcement, without James having introduced himself or sought her attention, sends ripple through the gathered court. Heads turn. People who were carefully positioned to be noticed by the Queen now redirect their attention to understand why she's addressing a junior human guard at a peripheral posting, rather than acknowledging the prominent courtiers and officers positioned strategically in her immediate vicinity. James responds with immediate, perfect military courtesy. Comes to formal attention, the position that soldiers adopt when directly addressed by superior authority. His movement is precise, practiced, showing 3 years of palace guard service where responding to unexpected directives is part of professional competence. "Your Majesty," he acknowledges, his voice carrying the clear diction that military training ingrains for formal communications. The court watches with confused fascination. The Queen addressing a junior guard by name before formal session begins is unprecedented in most attendees' experience. Guards are present for security, not for sovereign recognition, particularly not guards at peripheral stations rather than in prominent ceremonial positions. Seraphia's expression shows the focused attention that she gives to matters she considers significant, not casual inquiry, not performative acknowledgement, genuine interest in the human guard who caught her notice precisely because he wasn't seeking it. "How long have you been assigned to palace guard duty, Corporal?" she asks. The question seems simple, but everyone in the throne room recognizes it as something more. The Queen doesn't ask idle questions during court sessions, and addressing a specific guard before formal proceedings begin means something that the court is trying to process without yet understanding. James answers directly, 3 years, Your Majesty. And in those 3 years, Seraphia continues, have you ever sought audience with palace administration, requested assignment change or transfer, petitioned for advancement or commendation? The questions are revealing what the Queen noticed, testing whether the stillness, the lack of positioning, the absence of performance that caught her attention reflects genuine discipline, or whether it's strategic choice designed to appear humble while actually seeking notice through apparent humility. "No, Your Majesty," James replies. "I serve where I'm assigned. My duty is to provide security presence as required by my posting. I haven't sought changes to that assignment or recognition beyond performing it competently." The simplicity of the response, the complete absence of ambition beyond doing the job well, lands in the throne room with weight that the ambitious courtiers can feel. That's what caught the Queen's attention, not performance of humility. Queen Seraphia studies James for a long moment. The throne room remains silent, everyone processing what's happening and trying to understand what it signifies about sovereign attention and court dynamics. "Corporal Reeves," Seraphia says, her voice carrying formal authority that signals she's about to pronounce something significant. "You have served palace guard duty for 3 years with discipline and competence that required no announcement or recognition to be maintained. You perform your assigned duties without seeking advancement, without positioning yourself for favorable notice, without the calculations that most people employ when serving in contexts where sovereign attention could affect their careers." She pauses. That discipline, that focus on duty rather than on advancement, is precisely what I value most highly in those who serve closest to sovereign authority. Guards in my personal detail must be capable of maintaining professional readiness without requiring audience or recognition, must perform security function without making that function about themselves, must be trusted to do their duty regardless of whether anyone is watching or rewarding that duty. Lord Vethros, standing beside the throne, shows surprised skin colors that suggest he's processing something he didn't anticipate. Commander Thessari, captain of the Royal Guard, shows similar surprise mixed with what appears to be dawning recognition of what the Queen is about to announce. Therefore, Seraphia continues, I am appointing you to my personal guard detail, effective immediately. You will report to Commander Thessari for integration into the unit responsible for sovereign security. The throne room erupts in controlled but unmistakable shock. Courtiers show skin colors ranging from surprised white to confused purple to, in some cases, calculating gold as they process what this appointment means and what it reveals about how the Queen evaluates who deserves proximity to sovereign authority. The personal guard detail is elite posting, normally reserved for senior Thessari warriors with decades of service, explicit ambition to serve at the highest levels, and careful cultivation of the relationships and reputation that make them obvious candidates for such appointments. James is junior human guard with 3 years of palace service. He hasn't sought advancement, hasn't cultivated relationships with senior officials, hasn't performed any of the strategic positioning that everyone in the throne room assumed was necessary for advancement to positions of such prestige and responsibility. And he's just been appointed to the Queen's personal guard, chosen not despite his absence of those behaviors but because of it. Ambassador Chen, representing the human delegation, shows visible processing of what just occurred. The appointment elevates a human soldier to one of the most prestigious security positions in the Thessari Empire. But it does so in a way that contradicts every assumption about how such advancement works. Commander Thessari steps forward, her skin showing respectful gold mixed with professional assessment. Your Majesty, I will coordinate Corporal Reeves's integration into the personal guard immediately. His discipline and professional focus align well with the unit's requirements. She turns to James. Corporal, report to the Royal Guard Command Center after this court session concludes. We'll begin your transition to personal guard duties. Yes, Commander, James acknowledges. Seraphia's expression shows satisfaction, not with having surprised the court, but with having identified and elevated exactly the kind of discipline she values. The court should understand what this appointment demonstrates. Competence and loyalty that announce themselves constantly are less valuable than competence and loyalty that simply exist without requiring validation. Corporal Reeves served 3 years without seeking my attention. That's precisely why he has it now. She looks across the gathered courtiers, many of whom have spent years carefully positioning themselves for exactly the kind of favorable sovereign notice that James just received without seeking. Ambition that must be performed is ambition that serves itself rather than serving duty. True service, the kind that continues regardless of whether recognition follows, is what earns positions of genuine trust. The message is clear and uncomfortable for many in the throne room. The strategic positioning, the careful cultivation of visibility, the elaborate performances of capability, all the things that court culture treats as essential for advancement, are less valuable to the Queen than the quiet discipline that doesn't announce itself. Lord Vethros, recovering from his initial surprise, speaks carefully. Your Majesty, the appointment demonstrates your preference for substance over performance. Corporal Reeves's selection validates that those who serve without seeking advancement are noticed by sovereign attention even when they don't seek it. Exactly, Seraphia confirms. Being seen without asking is dangerous in this empire because it means I've noticed something that others missed or that someone tried to hide. Being chosen without seeking it is transformative because it demonstrates that the qualities I value most, discipline, focus, genuine loyalty, don't require announcement to be recognized. She returns her attention to James, who has maintained formal attention posture throughout this exchange. Corporal, you may return to your current posting for the remainder of this session. After the court concludes, report to Commander Thessari as instructed. "Yes, Your Majesty," James responds. He executes formal acknowledgment, the precise military courtesy that his training and experience have ingrained, and returns to the still, observant posture of a guard performing his assigned duty. The court session proceeds. Lord Vethros announces the formal agenda. The Queen delivers the other appointments she had planned, senior positions in imperial administration, going to various courtiers and officials who have been positioning themselves for such recognition. But the appointments that follow are overshadowed by the one that came first. The junior human guard elevated to the Queen's personal detail without seeking it, chosen precisely because he didn't seek it, demonstrating that sovereign attention finds what it values regardless of whether that value performs itself for notice. After the session concludes, James reports to the Royal Guard Command Center as instructed. Commander Thessari receives him with professional efficiency, but also with curiosity that she doesn't entirely hide. "Corporal Reeves, I've reviewed your service record," Thessari says. 3 years palace guard duty, competent performance throughout. No disciplinary issues. No commendations either, but that's because competent performance of assigned duty doesn't typically generate formal recognition unless something exceptional occurs. Your record is exactly what the Queen described. Discipline that doesn't announce itself. Service that continues without requiring validation. That's rare, particularly in palace context where most guards are aware that favorable notice could affect their careers, and therefore perform their duties with one eye toward being noticed. She pauses. "Did you know the Queen was observing you during the court session?" "No, Commander," James replies honestly. "I was focused on my security responsibilities, tracking room dynamics, maintaining awareness of access points and potential concerns. I was aware the Queen entered and noted her position for security purposes, but I wasn't tracking whether she was observing me specifically." "That's why she noticed you," Thessari says. "Everyone else was performing their duties while also performing awareness of her presence. You were simply performing your duties. That distinction, subtle as it is what caught her attention." She pulls up assignment protocols on her display. Personal guard detail operates differently from general palace guard duty. The security requirements are more intensive, the expectations for situational awareness are higher, and you'll be in direct proximity to the Queen regularly. That proximity means your conduct reflects on her judgment in selecting you. "I understand, Commander," James acknowledges. "I believe you do," Thessari says, "but I want to be explicit. The qualities that earned you this appointment, discipline that doesn't seek recognition, focus on duty rather than advancement, loyalty that continues without requiring validation, are the qualities the Queen values most in those closest to her. Maintain those qualities. Don't let elevation to prestigious posting change how you approach service." "I won't, Commander. I serve where I'm assigned, same as always." Thessari's skin shows approving gold. "Good, that's the right answer. Now let's begin your integration into the personal guard protocols." 3 months after his appointment to the Queen's personal guard, James has learned that Commander Thessari's description of the position's requirements was, if anything, understated. Personal guard duty means constant proximity to the Queen during public appearances, formal sessions, diplomatic functions, any context where sovereign presence requires security. It means elevated situational awareness, immediate readiness to respond to threats that are statistically unlikely but catastrophically significant if they occur, and the psychological challenge of maintaining that readiness during long periods where nothing threatening actually happens. It also means being visible in contexts where most palace guards remain in background. The Queen's personal detail are present in frame during official recordings, positioned prominently during formal gatherings, recognized by court observers as individuals rather than as anonymous security presence. That visibility has created exactly the kind of attention James spent 3 years avoiding. Courtiers now know his name. Senior officials acknowledge him when he's present. Other guards view him with mixture of respect and envy. Respect for the competence that earned the appointment. Envy for the prestigious posting that most of them would seek if they believed it was achievable. James handles the attention the same way he handled his previous anonymity, by focusing on his actual duty and not making his service about the recognition it generates. The approach has apparently been noticed. Queen Seraphia, during a private moment between formal functions, speaks to him directly about how he's adapted to personal guard service. Corporal Reeves, you've been serving in my personal detail for 3 months. Commander Thessari reports that your performance has been exemplary, maintaining the same discipline and focus that earned your appointment, without allowing the position's visibility to change how you approach your duties. Thank you, Your Majesty. I serve as required by my posting. That consistency is what I was testing for, Seraphia says. Many people perform discipline effectively when they're anonymous and seeking notice. Fewer maintain that discipline when they've achieved the notice they sought. You've demonstrated that your service wasn't performance designed to earn advancement. It's genuine approach to duty that continues regardless of whether recognition follows. She pauses. I want to explain something about why I noticed you during that court session 3 months ago, about what I was actually observing when I saw you maintaining your guard posting without shifting or seeking attention when I entered. Your Majesty, I'm honored to understand your reasoning, James says. I've ruled the Thessari Empire for 32 years, Seraphia continues. In that time, I've learned that the people who seek sovereign attention most aggressively are often the least reliable when given authority. Their service is performance designed to earn advancement rather than genuine commitment to duty. They're loyal to their own careers rather than to the responsibilities those careers entail. The people who simply do their duty, who serve competently without calculating how that service translates to advancement, are the ones who can be trusted with real responsibility, because their loyalty is to the work itself, rather than to the recognition the work might generate. During that court session, she explains, I watched courtiers positioning themselves strategically, military officers displaying their credentials prominently, guards subtly adjusting their postures to be more visible when I entered, all of them performing capability and seeking favorable notice. And I saw you maintaining exactly the same professional posture you presumably held before I arrived, not seeking my attention, not making my presence about demonstrating your own diligence, just doing your actual job, providing security presence, without the additional performance layer that everyone else was adding. That absence of performance is what caught my attention, Seraphia says, because it suggested your service wasn't about earning advancement. It was simply about doing the duty well regardless of whether anyone noticed. That's the quality I need in those closest to me. People who will serve competently whether I'm watching or not, whether recognition follows or not, whether advancement is possible or not. James absorbs this. Your Majesty, I appreciate that you've explained your reasoning. It helps me understand what you value in personal guard service. What I value is what you've been demonstrating for 3 years and continue to demonstrate now, Seraphia replies. Discipline that doesn't announce itself. Competence that continues without requiring validation. Loyalty that serves duty rather than serving career advancement. She looks at him directly. The court wasn't ready for the moment when I acknowledged you by name during that session. They didn't understand why I was addressing a junior guard at a peripheral posting, instead of the prominent officers and courtiers who had positioned themselves for my attention. They weren't ready because they assumed advancement requires seeking it. That visibility and performance are necessary for being noticed favorably. Your appointment demonstrated that assumption is wrong, Seraphia continues. That true loyalty and competence don't announce themselves. That the moment power turns its gaze on the quiet one can upend every expectation about how advancement works. Being seen without asking is dangerous, because it means I've found something valuable that wasn't performing itself for notice. Being chosen without seeking it is transformative because it validates that genuine service doesn't require strategic positioning to be recognized. That's the lesson I wanted the court to understand, she concludes, and that you've continued to embody in the months since your appointment. Maintain that approach, Corporal. Continue serving with the same discipline that earned this posting. That's all I require from those in my personal guard. Years later, when James is training new members of the Queen's personal guard detail, he reflects on the moment that transformed his career from anonymous competent service to visible prestigious appointment. I was doing my job, James tells the trainees, standing at a peripheral guard posting during formal court session, providing security presence, not seeking advancement, not positioning myself for notice, just performing my assigned duty the way I'd been doing for 3 years. The Queen noticed me precisely because I wasn't seeking her attention, he continues. Among all the courtiers performing capability and guards subtly positioning for favorable notice, the human who simply stood still and did his job without making it about himself stood out. Not because I was doing anything dramatic or unusual, because I was doing exactly what I was supposed to do without the additional layer of performance that everyone else was adding. That's what earned appointment to personal guard detail, James says. Not strategic positioning or careful cultivation of visibility, just discipline that doesn't announce itself. Competence that continues without requiring validation. Service that focuses on duty rather than on how duty translates to advancement. The lesson isn't that you should avoid ambition or pretend you don't want advancement, he clarifies. The lesson is that genuine service, service that continues regardless of whether recognition follows, is what earns positions of real trust and responsibility. When you focus on doing your actual duty well rather than on performing your duty in ways designed to be noticed, you demonstrate the kind of loyalty that power values most highly. The proud Queen takes notice of the quiet guard, James concludes. Not because the guard sought her attention, but because among loud ambition and strategic positioning, genuine discipline that doesn't announce itself stands out precisely because it's not trying to stand out. That's how true competence gets recognized, not through performance designed to earn notice, but through consistent service that simply exists without requiring validation. Among polished armor and loud ambition, the human guard stood unnoticed, still, observant, doing exactly what he was assigned and nothing more. He didn't shift when the Queen entered. He didn't seek her gaze. That is why she noticed him.